By the turn of the 19th century, New South Wales was hanging on by a thread. The colony that was meant to embody imperial discipline had become a cautionary tale of chaos. The Rum Rebellion of 1808, Australia's only successful military coup, had shattered any illusion of order. The man at the centre of that mutiny was Governor William Bligh, a figure already famous for being overthrown by his own crew aboard the Bounty. History repeated itself in Sydney, but this time the mutineers weren't sailors, they were soldiers, officers of the New South Wales Corps, who had turned rum into currency and government into a private enterprise. For nearly 2 years, the colony was effectively run by the military. Justice, already shaky, became a tool of convenience. Convicts were assigned based on favour, not need. Land grants were traded like poker chips, and the lines between power and plunder blurred until they disappeared entirely. London was furious, but also at a loss. How had this colony become so ungovernable? Who could possibly turn it around? Into this storm stepped Lachlan Macquarie. Born in 1762 on the rugged Isle of Ulva, off the coast of Scotland, Macquarie was the product of hardship. He joined the army young and served across the globe, from India to Egypt, the West Indies to North Africa. A soldier by trade, but also a thinker. A man who believed in order, in structure, and in the strange notion that even the worst of men could be redeemed. Macquarie was not the obvious choice to govern a penal colony, teetering on the edge of rebellion. But perhaps that was exactly why he was chosen. He had seen the worst of empire and survived it, and more importantly, he believed in the power of reform. In 1809, with a firm handshake and a tight-lipped promise to restore the King's rule, Macquarie accepted the role of Governor of New South Wales. He wouldn't just enforce the law, he'd rebuild it from the ground up. Macquarie arrived in Sydney on December 28, 1809, accompanied by his regiment, the 73rd Foot, and his wife Elizabeth, a woman of sharp intellect and unwavering support. Together they disembarked into a colony bruised and battered. The town was a patchwork of makeshift buildings, muddy paths, and demoralised people. Convicts worked without hope. Settlers schemed for influence, and the ghost of the rebellion lingered in every shadow. Macquarie moved swiftly. Within days, he annulled all decisions made during the rebellion. He declared Bligh's removal illegal, reinstated the proper legal framework, and ordered the withdrawal of the New South Wales Corps from civil duties. It was a clean slate, but not an easy one. Macquarie knew that authority restored by force alone would only last until the next flash of discontent. What the colony needed wasn't just punishment, it needed purpose. He walked the streets himself, spoke to convicts and settlers alike, took notes, asked questions. Where others saw criminals and chaos, he saw wasted potential. He saw masons, carpenters, tailors, and farmers buried under their past mistakes, given no chance to contribute, no hope of change. Macquarie was not naive. He believed in discipline, but he also believed in redemption. If a man had served his sentence and proved himself worthy, then he should be welcomed back into society. It was a radical idea, and it would define his legacy. From the very start, Macquarie governed with blueprints, literally. He believed that the physical shape of a colony influenced the moral shape of its people. Order in the streets would bring order to the soul. He sketched street grids, envisioned town squares, and instructed his officials to build not just for function, but for dignity. Between 1810 and 1821, Macquarie commissioned the construction of more than 260 public works, an enormous figure given the colony's size and budget. Roads were paved, bridges raised, barracks constructed, courthouses designed, and harbours improved. The very layout of Sydney was reshaped, transforming it from a penal outpost into the seed of a true city. Macquarie established new towns across the Hawkesbury River region: Windsor, Richmond, Pitt Town, Castlereagh, and Wilberforce, each carefully laid out with churches, schools, inns, and marketplaces. The philosophy was simple. If people lived in places that inspired respect, they might begin to respect themselves. But not everyone appreciated this vision. Many free settlers, known as the exclusives, mocked Macquarie's grand plans. They preferred a colony built on hierarchy, where birth and status determined one's place. Macquarie's town plans, with open civic access and spaces for all classes, felt dangerously egalitarian. He didn't care. He was building not for the rich, but for the future. Macquarie's belief in reform wasn't just theoretical. He put it into practice in ways that shocked the colonial elite. He granted land to emancipated convicts, people who had served their sentences and proven themselves capable. He appointed them to public offices. He invited them to Government House. He treated them in many respects as equals. To the exclusives, this was heresy, to elevate a former convict to the same level as a gentleman was, in their eyes, to destroy the natural order. But to Macquarie, it was justice, and it was smart policy. Many of the colony's most skilled workers were ex-convicts. They were carpenters, architects, blacksmiths, teachers. Ignoring their potential was not only cruel, it was foolish. Macquarie's most famous appointment was Francis Greenway, a convict transported for forgery. Recognising his architectural talent, Macquarie made him the colony's civil architect. Under his guidance, Sydney gained some of its most iconic buildings: St James Church, Hyde Park Barracks, the Macquarie Lighthouse. But Greenway was just one example. Emancipists were rising in all areas: business, education, government. It created a political storm. Pamphlets were printed, letters were sent to London. Rumours swirled that Macquarie was turning the colony into a den of socialists and ex-cons. But still, he persisted, because in his heart he believed something few in his position ever had, that a man's worst act should not define his whole life. Macquarie knew that buildings were not enough. For a colony to evolve, it needed institutions. And for institutions to matter, people needed to be educated. He expanded schools across the colony, including dedicated schools for Indigenous children, like the controversial Native Institution. While well-intentioned in the colonial mind, it operated under the flawed and damaging belief that Aboriginal culture needed to be replaced, not respected. Modern views rightfully critique these efforts, but in the context of his time, Macquarie was seen as progressive. He was one of the few governors who even attempted to understand and engage with Aboriginal communities. He also worked to improve the treatment of women. He ordered better regulation of the female factory in Parramatta and increased support for single women and female convicts. The goal was simple: give people structure and they will rise to meet it. He introduced the first official currency, ending the confusing barter system and bringing financial order to the colony. He reformed the judicial system, making courts more accessible and attempting to reduce the influence of the powerful over the powerless. And always, he built Hyde Park Barracks, the Mint, military hospitals, dockyards, forts, even botanical gardens, each one a stone in the foundation of a future Australia. But no good deed goes unpunished. By 1817, Macquarie's reforms had drawn significant backlash from wealthy settlers, military officers, and even officials in London. They complained that he spent too much, empowered the wrong people, and ruled with too much independence. The tipping point came when London sent John Thomas Bigge, a royal commissioner, to conduct a sweeping review of the colony. Bigge arrived under the guise of fact-finding. In truth, he had a mission: dismantle Macquarie's reforms and restore the old order. He was a man of the aristocracy, disdainful of emancipists and deeply sceptical of Macquarie's egalitarian ideals. Over 2 years, Bigge interviewed settlers, soldiers and officials, mostly from the anti-Macquarie camp. His reports accused the governor of fiscal mismanagement, social overreach and undermining British values. The final nail in the coffin came in 1821. Macquarie, realising his vision would no longer be supported, resigned. He returned to Britain feeling betrayed by the empire he had served and by the very people he had tried to uplift. He died 3 years later, quietly in Scotland. No statue, no parade, no thanks, not yet. But history, like Macquarie himself, plays the long game. In time, the true scale of his work came into focus. Macquarie had done more than govern. He had reimagined what a penal colony could be. He introduced reform into a system built on retribution. He invested in human potential when others demanded punishment. He replaced chaos with planning and despair with purpose. Today his legacy is etched into the map. Macquarie Street, Macquarie University, Port Macquarie, Lake Macquarie. His buildings still stand. His towns still thrive. His vision, once ridiculed, became the blueprint for a nation. But perhaps his greatest legacy is philosophical. He believed that society is not fixed, that convicts can become citizens, that second chances are not weakness, but strength. He saw a land of opportunity, not just for the powerful, but for all. Australia would go on to embrace those ideals, not perfectly, not easily, but the seeds were planted by a Scottish soldier with a ruler in one hand and a dream in the other. Lachlan Macquarie didn't just rebuild a colony, he imagined a country.